Hi everyone, today I'll show you how I made this miniature mocha with a couple of coffee cups and some pastries. A moka is a small kitchen appliance to brew coffee, and you will find one in almost every Italian household. So I took my own moka from the kitchen and measured it, divided the numbers by 12 and then drew a sketch. On a 1 to 12 scale, the item is more or less 1 centimeter in height, so it looked very small on paper. Therefore, I decided to build a slightly bigger one parallel to the small one, just in case the small one ended up being really too tiny. And in real life, you get mochas in different sizes, so the big one is also realistic. I drew a second sketch breaking down the whole structure, which works as a list for all the components I'll have to make. And I'll start from the two bigger pieces that make up the body. I took a rounded wooden dowel and divided it into 8 parts, like this. Then, with my electric file, I started creating the octagonal shape that is typical of a mocha. And as I said earlier, parallel to the small one, I was also creating the bigger one, so here's the comparison between the two. And I made a mold with my usual 2-component silicone putty and made the bottom part with polymer clay, which I baked inside the mold. For the top part, I repeat the same process, but I create a sort of hollow area like this in order to get an edge where I can then add a small indentation later. Next, I create the centerpiece, which connects the top and the bottom. I roll out a small snake of clay, making sure that the diameter fits with the bottom, and then bake. And after baking, I cut out a slice from the snake. Next is the cap, and in this case I used the little knob on top of the real mocha, which is very conveniently a miniature version of the cap with its 8 sides. So I made a rather strange and flat mold that worked out quite well. Then I made the little bit for the knob on top of the cap. And lastly, the handle. In this case, I freehand sculpted the handle on polymer clay. Again, I made a small and a big one, just referencing the real object in front of me. and I made molds also in this case. Then I added one last bit which connects the cap and the handle. And now at last I have all my elements and I can paint them and glue them. For the spout, I just used a piece of paper, folded it and cut out a tiny triangle and glued this on the indentation. And the very last detail, I added a tiny ball of air drying clay to imitate the small valve at the bottom of the Moka. Having made so many molds for this project means that I was able to replicate it quite easily, and I am definitely going to use all these little guys in future mini projects. Moving on to the coffee cups. This time I used air drying clay and 2 identical pens because I built the 2 cups together parallel, so at least to try to get them as similar as possible. After the cap was dried, I added the handle, gluing it with white glue. I then made the small plate that goes under the coffee cup using a cookie cutter, which is not sharp at all, so I had to later sand off the edges. Once the cups and plates were dry, I sprayed them with acrylic paint, and I did this step outdoors without filming it because I was afraid that the paint might end up on the camera lenses. But the end result is the same as if I had used white nail polish, which you can use on air drying clay. Last part, the pastries, which are inspired by a type of Italian pastry, cannoncini alla crema. They're made with polymer clay, and to shape them I used this soft silicone tool. Then I just added texture and color with different tools and artist pastels. Having shaped the pastry around the silicone tip allows me to remove it quite easily so that I don't have to bake the silicone tool. After baking, I make the cream filling using a mix of white, translucent and yellow polymer clay mixed with some drops of water to make it softer. I took this tiny nozzle and created the filling this way. To imitate the icing sugar on top, I very lightly dab some white paint, and lastly I add some varnish only to the cream filling so that the cream looks nice and shiny. And we got to the end of this project. Thank you very much for watching, but there's one more minute to this video where I'll show you how to brew coffee with Moka, because it occurred to me while editing that not everyone might be familiar with it. So I'll leave you with a tiny ASMR Moka tutorial. Bye!